At the hospital, my son signed a contract to put me in a nursing home and said he didn't need me anymore. I just smiled and accepted it. 2 days later, when he got the news that the beach house was no longer his, he went PALAREN. The humming of the fluorescent lights in the hospital room was a low, constant presence, a sterile and clinical sound that did nothing to soothe the turmoil inside me. I lay there, a man of 75 years, feeling more like a piece of abandoned luggage than a living person. At the foot of my bed, my son, Mark, stood with a clipboard clutched in his hand. His face was set in what he likely believed was a picture of responsible concern, but my old eyes, tired from a life of hard work, saw through the charade. It was impatience, pure and simple. "Dad, you've been here for a week. The doctor says you're stable, but you'll need constant care. I can't be here all the time, you know how busy my business is," he said, his voice a polished, practiced drone. He glanced at his wife, Sarah, who sat by the window, her attention entirely consumed by her phone. They were a perfect pair, two figures of tailored suits and expensive handbags, people who viewed the world as a commodity to be managed, not a life to be lived. They had a singular focus on their own success and convenience, and I, it seemed, had become an inconvenient detail in their grand plan. I looked at him, at the son for whom I had toiled tirelessly, the son I had sent to the best schools, the one I had helped launch his successful real estate firm. I had poured my life savings into his education and his first big business deal, all because that's what a father does. You build a foundation for your children so they can build a better life. I never expected a thank you, but I certainly didn't anticipate this. "So you've decided it's best for me to move into a home?" I asked, my voice a little raspy, perhaps a little weaker than I would have liked. The truth was, my recent heart attack had shaken me, but it hadn't broken me. It had, however, given Mark the perfect pretext to make his move. He saw my temporary frailty not as a hurdle to overcome, but as a permanent state of being, a problem to be solved with as little effort as possible on his part. "Dad, it's not a decision, it's a necessity," he stated, his tone dripping with condescension, as if he were explaining a simple concept to a slow-witted child. "I've found a place. The Golden Acres Retirement Community. They have nurses on staff 24/7, activities. It's a beautiful place, really. We've already signed the paperwork." The finality in his words, the way he had made all the arrangements without consulting me, without a single conversation about what I might want, that was the real sting. He wasn't just deciding for me. He was making it clear I had no say in my own life anymore. I was a problem to be solved, a possession to be stored away in a facility he deemed appropriate. He handed me a pen and the clipboard with a contract attached. The words were a blur, but the title stood out. Admission and Care Agreement. It was a document designed to erase my life, to hand over the reins completely. "Just sign here, Dad. It's for your own good," he insisted, his hand hovering impatiently over the signature line. He was so eager, so focused on this final act of removal, that he failed to notice the distant look in my eyes as a memory surfaced from decades past. I was a younger man then, sitting in a very similar office, a pen in my hand, signing the deed to my first property, a small but sturdy home in the city. The lawyer at the time had told me, "This is your family's foundation, Mr. Harrison. Never lose control of your foundation." I had taken those words to heart, building a life not just with bricks and mortar, but with contracts and a deep understanding of legal maneuvering. It was a skill I'd picked up while building my small construction business from the ground up, a knowledge that had been crucial to my success. Mark knew about the construction, the hard labor, but he never bothered to learn about the finer points of the business, the legal side of things. He saw me as a simple man with dirt under my fingernails, not a shrewd businessman who had outmaneuvered bigger corporations. He had forgotten that side of me. He had decided that his modern, tech-driven life made him inherently superior to my old-fashioned, hard-earned one. I took the pen from his hand. A small, almost imperceptible smirk touched my lips. He saw it and his face tightened for a second. A brief flash of annoyance. He probably thought it was a sign of senility, an old man's misplaced humor. He couldn't have been more wrong. My smirk was not of amusement but of a quiet, cold resolve. I signed the paper with a steady hand. My signature was a little shaky, but it was there, solid and clear. I looked up at him and Sarah, my own flesh and blood, who had so easily traded my dignity for their convenience. My home, my life, my self-respect. It was all on the line. I didn't protest, I didn't cry, I didn't even argue. I just looked at him and said with a quiet strength that surprised even myself, "Mark, I accept your terms. See, Dad? This is for the best," he said, taking the clipboard back. "I'll be back in a few days to get you settled." He and Sarah stood up to leave, already talking about a business deal he had to close. My existence had been reduced to a minor inconvenience, now neatly filed away in a sterile document. As they walked out the door, a kind nurse came in to check my vitals. I looked at her and winked, a gesture she didn't quite understand. That night, alone in my sterile hospital room, a thought came to me. The very moment Mark had declared he no longer needed me, he had unknowingly forfeited his own claim to a part of his life he had always taken for granted. He saw a frail old man in a hospital bed, but what he didn't see was the old lion, wounded but not defeated, who had spent a lifetime building his den. And now, he was about to learn a very hard lesson about what happens when you disturb a lion's rest. The contract he had so smugly presented was indeed an agreement to place me in a nursing home. It was a clear, legally binding document, but what he didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to read in his haste, was the fine print. And in that fine print, a small clause I had added years ago, a little detail I had worked on meticulously with my lawyer, waited patiently. The clause was simple, but its implications were explosive. Upon the signatory's declaration of disinterest in the care or well-being of the primary party, all previous legal agreements regarding shared property or future inheritance become null and void, and the primary party retains full exclusive ownership and legal rights. The game was over, and he had already lost. Now all I had to do was wait for him to realize it. The poetic justice, I decided, was going to be an ocean of cold, hard facts crashing down on his little castle of lies. The 2 days that followed my signature were a quiet storm of activity, a calculated calm before a devastating tsunami. While Mark and Sarah went about their lives basking in the glow of their perceived victory, I was making my moves from the confines of my hospital bed. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, an old and trusted friend, was a man who understood the true value of a handshake and the even truer power of a well-written contract. He had been working diligently behind the scenes, a silent partner in my plan. We spoke on the phone, my voice low and calm. "Mr. Henderson, everything is proceeding as planned." "He signed the document," I said, a flicker of triumph in my heart. The memory of Mark's triumphant face and his wife's casual dismissal of my existence fueled me. "Perfect, Mr. Harrison. The transfer of the beach house title is complete. It's now solely and legally in your name. He won't have a leg to stand on." I could almost picture Mark and Sarah sipping expensive coffee at their breakfast nook, discussing their plans for the beach house. Mark had always considered it his, a given, a part of his guaranteed future. The property had been a smart investment I had acquired decades ago, during a time when my back ached from laying bricks under the blistering sun. The original plan was to pass it down to him, a legacy of my hard work and sacrifice, but a legacy, I had decided, should be earned through respect, not entitlement. Mark called me that evening, his voice brimming with excitement and a self-satisfied arrogance that made my blood run cold. "Dad, I've already contacted an architect. We're going to do a full renovation on the beach house this summer," he said, his words painting a picture of luxury and excess. "We're thinking an infinity pool, a new deck. It's going to be incredible." He spoke of new granite countertops and imported tiles, all the while conveniently forgetting the memories of me teaching him how to fish off the very same pier he now wanted to tear down and replace. The audacity was staggering. I said nothing, just listened patiently. There was no point in arguing. The time for words was over. Now was the time for consequences. "That sound lovely, son," I finally said, my voice as neutral as I could make it. He took my calmness for agreement. Another sign of my docile acceptance, his arrogance blinding him to the cold resolve in my tone. The next day, my physical therapist, a young man named Tom, came to see me. He was a good kid, hardworking, and reminded me of myself at his age. We talked about his college loans, his dreams of opening his own clinic. I offered him some advice, a few tips from my business days. He listened intently, a stark contrast to my son who only ever listened to the sound of his own voice. "You know, Tom," I said as I sat on the edge of the bed, my legs feeling stronger with each passing day, "people often forget that the most important part of a contract isn't always the big words. It's the small ones, the little clauses hidden in the fine print. That's where the real power is." He didn't know the specifics, of course, but he understood the sentiment. He saw me not as a frail old man, but as a man with a mind, a man with experience. He gave me the respect that my own son denied me. It was a strange, bittersweet feeling. Later that afternoon, a real estate lawyer I had hired on Mr. Henderson's recommendation, a sharp young woman named Ms. Chen, arrived at my hospital room. She brought with her a small briefcase and an air of quiet professionalism. We spoke for an hour, finalizing the details of the property transfer and my new legal standing. We also discussed what would happen to the money I had set aside for Mark and Sarah's inheritance, the money I had been saving for years. That too was now in a different place, in a different name. As we finalized the paperwork, she looked at me with a mixture of awe and respect. "You're a very shrewd man, Mr. Harrison," she said, closing her briefcase. "Most people would have just given in, accepted their fate, but you turned their own greed against them. It's an elegant solution. Chen, I built a life out of nothing. I learned a long time ago that the world doesn't hand you what you want, you have to take it, and sometimes you have to let people think they're winning before you show them the full hand." He gave her a perfunctory nod, his eyes already on me, his mind already on the next thing he could take. He didn't even register that the woman who had just walked out of my room was a lawyer who was about to dismantle his entire life. He sat on the chair Sarah had occupied, a look of faux concern on his face. "How are you feeling, Dad? We've made the deposit for the renovations at the beach house. I can't wait for you to see what we're going to do with it. You're going to love it." It was the final straw. He had gone too far. He had not only decided I was a burden, he had decided I was no longer a person. And that, I decided, was a mistake he would never forget. "Mark," I said, my voice low and steady, "I have one request." "Yes, Dad?" "What is it?" he asked, already mentally preparing for another trivial request from his senile old father. "Just get me out of here. I want to go home." "Of course, Dad, I'll make the arrangements. The nursing home will be much better for you. Don't you worry about a thing." I was talking about the place where I had lived for 50 years, the place he thought he was about to own, the place that was now exclusively and legally mine. His arrogance was a towering inferno, and he was about to get burned, badly. The final 2 days in the hospital passed in a blur of routine medical checks, the low hum of the machines a final backdrop to the life I was leaving behind. My new legal life, built on contracts and clauses Mark had so arrogantly dismissed, felt more real than the hospital bed I was leaving. As Mark drove me to the nursing home, a pristine, sterile building surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns, his phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson, my lawyer. Mark, in a habit of his I had always found annoying, put the call on speaker. The air in the car, already thick with unspoken tension, was about to become electrified. "Mark, good morning." Mr. Henderson's voice was polite but firm. "I'm calling about the deed to the beach house. I'm afraid there's been a change in ownership. Your father has transferred the property into his name exclusively." The color drained from it, replaced by a gray, waxy sheen. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor, its screen cracking on the cheap plastic. What are you talking about?" he stammered, his voice laced with disbelief. "That's impossible. The beach house is a part of my inheritance." Henderson's voice was a calm, steady counterpoint to Mark's rising hysteria. "Mark, you signed a contract 2 days ago in the hospital, a contract that explicitly states that by disclaiming responsibility for your father's care and well-being, you would forfeit any and all claims to shared properties. The beach house was a shared deed, a gift from your father. The moment you signed that document, you gave up your rights to it." He had taken my quiet acceptance as a sign of weakness, a victory handed to him on a silver platter. Now he saw it for what it was, a trap, a meticulously laid snare from which there was no escape. Dad, what did you do?" he whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. "Why would you do this?" The man who had seen me as a problem to be solved, a possession to be discarded. The man who had so smugly and so publicly signed me away. The man who was now about to learn the price of his greed. "Son," I said, my voice calm, the quiet strength I had found in the hospital room now a solid, unshakable rock. "You signed a contract to put me in a nursing home and said you didn't need me anymore." I just smirked and agreed. "You got exactly what you asked for. You no longer have me to worry about. And I no longer have you to worry about. The beach house. It was the one thing you really cared about. It was what you thought you were getting in exchange for your trouble with me. Now you have neither." He pulled over to the side of the road, slamming the car into park. He looked at me, a torrent of emotions in his eyes. Anger, confusion, and a deep, gut-wrenching despair. "You tricked me," he hissed, the words dripping with venom. "I didn't trick you, son," I said, a wave of weariness washing over me. "I just let you show me who you really were. I let you sign the paperwork. You were so busy seeing what you were gaining that you didn't bother to see what you were losing. You just assumed, because I was old and sick, that I was stupid. You assumed I would just lay down and die for you. You were wrong. That's your final act, Mark. You signed me away to this place. You don't have to worry about me anymore, and now I don't have to worry about you. It's a fair trade, wouldn't you say? He had already told his friends, his clients, his entire world about the renovations. He had already spent the money. He had already lived in a fantasy of what his life was going to be. A fantasy that had now, in the span of a single phone call, been shattered into 1,000 pieces. He had tried to get rid of me, to store me away in a nursing home and take what he wanted. But what he didn't realize was that I had already given him a chance years ago to be a good son. I had given him my time, my money, my love, and he had thrown it all back in my face. The house, I decided, was the price of his greed. The poetic justice was that he had paid that price himself. He was a broken man now, not physically, but spiritually. He had lost everything he had ever truly cared about, not because of a sudden twist of fate, but because of his own self-inflicted actions. The house, the money, the inheritance, all gone. And the father he had so arrogantly discarded was now a free man, a man with his dignity, his pride, and his beach house, all intact. It was a beautiful, devastating, and perfectly executed act of revenge, and in his moment of total unmitigated despair, I finally felt at peace. Mark drove me to the entrance of the Golden Acres retirement community, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. The silence in the car was deafening, a thick, palpable thing filled with unspoken rage and a simmering, desperate kind of grief. I could almost hear his mind working, scrambling for a solution, a loophole, a way out of the hole he had so eagerly dug for himself. He was a cornered animal, and the fear of losing everything was a powerful motivator. But it was a motivation born of self-preservation, not love or remorse. He pulled up to the front doors and got out, his movements jerky and filled with a frantic energy. He opened my door, his face a mask of what he probably thought was a reasonable apology. But my old eyes saw the raw greed and fury in his. "Dad, we can fix this. Just tell Mr. Henderson you made a mistake. We can tear up that contract. I can take you home." The words were a desperate, transparent plea. He wasn't asking for me. He was begging for the house. He wasn't trying to fix our relationship. He was trying to fix his mistake. He had already chosen his path, and now he was trying to turn back, but it was too late. I shook my head slowly, a sad, knowing smile on my face. "Mark, the contract is legally binding. You read it. You signed it. And more importantly, you agreed to it. The moment you said you didn't need me, you set the wheels in motion. You can't put the genie back in the bottle." He knew I was right. He had been so arrogant, so sure of himself that he had overlooked the one detail that mattered. He had thought he was a shrewd businessman, but he had been outmaneuvered by the simple man he had so easily dismissed. He led me into the lobby, a woman at the front desk greeting him with a professional, practiced smile. "Mr. Harrison, your room is ready. Your son signed all the necessary papers." Mark's face went from pale to ashen. The woman didn't know the irony of her words, but I did. He had not just signed the papers to put me in a nursing home. He had also signed away his entire future, his inheritance, his dreams. As a kind young man with a wheelchair came to greet me, Mark pulled me aside, his voice a low, frantic whisper. "Dad, please just tell me what to do. I've already paid the deposit for the renovations. I've told my clients I'm going to be managing the project. My reputation is on the line. Just tell me what you want." I looked at him and realized that he was just a child, a spoiled, entitled child who had never grown up. I had given him everything, and now he was begging for more. It was a sad, pathetic sight. I put a hand on his shoulder and he flinched. "Son," I said, my voice low and quiet, "you've already had your chance to be a man. Now you're just a boy who's lost his marbles. The beach house, and it was never a possession. It was a symbol of our family, of our life, of our love. But you didn't see that. You just saw a dollar sign, and now you've lost it all. That's not a trick, Mark. That's called justice." He pulled away from me, his eyes filled with tears of rage and frustration. He turned and walked away, a defeated man. I watched him go, his shoulders slumped, his steps slow. He never looked back. Later that afternoon, a few of my old friends, the men I had built my business with, came to visit me. We sat in the garden, the sun warm on our faces, and we laughed. We talked about old times, about the struggles and the triumphs. They had heard about the situation with Mark, and they had all, in their own ways, given me their full support. They had seen what Mark was doing, and they were all, in their own silent ways, rooting for me. My phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Harrison, I just got off the phone with Mark's real estate firm. They've decided to pull their investment from the beach house renovation project. They've also let Mark go. It seems they found out about the situation with you and they've decided they don't want to be associated with someone who would do that to their own father. It's a sad day for him, but a good day for you." I smiled. "It's a good day for justice, Mr. Henderson. It's a good day for justice." The next morning I woke up feeling a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew I was in control of it. I had my dignity, my self-respect, and my beach house all intact. And I had a new beginning, a new chapter in my life, a chapter where I was free to be myself, without the weight of a thankless, selfish family on my shoulders. It was a beautiful, hard-won freedom. It was a freedom I was more than happy to pay for, and it was a freedom I was going to enjoy, one day at a time. My time at the Golden Acres retirement community was, ironically, not a life sentence, but a quiet retreat, a sanctuary from the storm of a life I no longer recognized. I settled into a comfortable routine, enjoying the peace and the company of others who understood the value of a good conversation and a well-lived life. I had a small apartment with a balcony that overlooked a beautiful rose garden. I spent my mornings drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, a simple pleasure I hadn't enjoyed in years, always feeling rushed and burdened by the demands of a family that saw me only as a resource to be exploited. One afternoon, a notification arrived on my phone. It was an email from Ms. Chen, my real estate lawyer. She had successfully completed the legal formalities, and the deed to the beach house was now unequivocally mine. The house was now free of any encumbrance, any claim, any lingering debt. It was a clean slate, a new beginning. A tear, hot and salty, rolled down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of profound relief. The poetic justice was now a legal reality, and the foundation I had so carefully built was now, finally, mine again. A few days later, I decided to take a short trip to see it. It was a beautiful sunny day. The ocean breeze was cool on my face. The scent of salt and sand a welcome change from the sanitized air of the retirement home. As I walked up to the house, I saw a familiar face standing in the driveway. My granddaughter, Emily. She was a beautiful, smart young woman, the apple of my eye. She had always been kind to me, but she had been kept away from me by her parents, who saw my old-fashioned ways as a hindrance to her social development. She ran to me and wrapped me in a tight hug. "I'm so glad to see you. I've been so worried about you. I'm finally free. Dad, he's a mess. He lost his job, his friends. He's blaming everyone but himself. And Mom, she's just as bad. They're fighting all the time. It's horrible. Emily, what your father did, it was a choice he made out of his own selfishness. And what I did, it was also a choice I made to reclaim my life, my dignity. It was a difficult choice, but it was the right one. And now I have my life back, and I want to share it with you." We laughed as we remembered a time when she was a little girl, building sandcastles on the beach and getting a sunburn on her nose. The house, I realized, was not just a possession. It was a testament to our family, to our love, to the memories we had created. It was the foundation, and it was now a symbol of a new beginning. That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in a kaleidoscope of orange and pink, I told her about my plan. "Emily, I've decided to open the beach house up to the community. I want to turn it into a place for families, for people who need a place to reconnect, to rebuild. I want to give back, to share what I have, not hoard it. And I want you to help me." "Grandpa, I would love that," she said, her voice filled with a genuine, heartfelt excitement. "I can help you with the marketing, the social media. We can make it a beautiful, wonderful place." I was no longer just an old man in a retirement home, a burden to his ungrateful son. I was a man with a purpose, a man with a new family, a man with a new life. A few months later, I received a letter from Mark. It was a short, bitter note full of blame and self-pity. He had lost everything, he wrote. His business, his wife, his friends. He was living in a small apartment, struggling to make ends meet. He ended the letter by saying, "I hope you're happy with what you've done, Dad. You got what you wanted." He had gotten what he wanted too. He had gotten rid of me, but in the process, he had also gotten rid of his inheritance, his family, his future. He had won the battle, but he had lost the war. I put the letter in a drawer, a symbol of a past I was now free from. I walked out onto my balcony, the sun warm on my face, the scent of roses in the air. I looked out at the ocean, at the vast, endless expanse of blue. I was an old man, but my life had just begun. The poetic justice had been served. The slate had been wiped clean, and my new horizon was as wide and as beautiful as the sea before me. And in that moment, I knew with a deep, abiding certainty that I had made the right choice. And I was more than happy with what I had done. I was at peace.